dark for you? Bring it up just a little bit, MK, for the audience. It's a little too dark for them. Turn up the lights a little bit for the audience. No? You like it? Yes. I like it too then. Okay, good deal. All right, here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Larry Stowe, and we are the Ford's Colony Dance Band. Tonight, as we did at last year's Veterans Day, we are going to pay a tribute to the brave men and women of the armed forces who, during World War II, gave their all to keep us in a peaceful relationship with the rest of the world. And we're going to do a salute to that wonderful group of service people who did that. The Second World War began on September 1st, 1939 with the German invasion of Poland and ended with the Japanese surrender on September 2nd, 1945. During those 6 years of world conflict, roughly 2/3 of American households owned a radio. Certainly listening to the big band orchestras of Glenn Miller, Artie Shaw, Tommy Dorsey, and Benny Goodman, and many others brought relief to the American people and their allies from the worries caused by news reports coming from the front lines. For tonight's salute, we are going to revisit that era by turning this theater into an NBC radio station, broadcasting news reports from the war's front lines and music by the Benny Goodman Orchestra during its weekly show, Let's Dance. With each week's show, Benny, yours truly, is going to feature the music of another big band leader or vocalist. And I do need to make one comment before I proceed any further. We've had an unfortunate situation with our piano player, and he has an emergency. He could not be with us tonight. We were so fortunate on a 2 hours notice to get Professor Harris Simon here to play piano. All right, so folks, please don't be alarmed when the theater staff adds some lighting effects to help you experience the show, both as a studio audience and as a member of the radio listening people at home. So get comfortable, use your imagination, and travel with us back to October 10th, 1939. Hold it. We need the mic backstage, please.
I know, I'm working on it.
I have to explain that because of these complications with trying to arrange things, we were all late trying to get here, so excuse us while we do some fine tuning. Okay, try it again.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on October 6, 1939. War begins in Europe. The Second World War began at dawn on September 1st, 1939, when Germany's army launched an invasion of Poland from the west. The Poles fought bravely, but they were heavily outnumbered in both men and machines, and especially in the air. Britain and France declared war on Germany on September 3rd, but gave no real assistance to Poland. On September 17th, the Russians, on their own initiative, invaded Poland from the east. On September 27th, Warsaw surrendered to Germany. And today, October 6th, Germany annexed Western Poland and Russia annexed Eastern Poland, threatening the future existence of the Polish state. This concludes my report. Please stay tuned to NBC for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, both here in our New York City studio and in homes throughout America. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We'll start this evening's program with Let's Dance, our theme song. Enjoy. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
This is Francis McCall with an NBC News report on June 4th, 1940. British soldiers evacuated from Dunkirk, France. On May 10th, 1940, the Germans began a long-expected offensive, invading neutral Holland and Belgium and attacking northern France. Holland capitulated after only 5 days of fighting, and the Belgians surrendered on May 28th. With the success of the Germans, the British Expeditionary Force and its allies had to be evacuated from Dunkirk by the Royal and French navies, together with hundreds of civilian fishing vessels. Over 338,000 were saved. Today, newly elected British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, speaking to the British nation, called it a miracle of deliverance, but warned, wars are not won by evacuations. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Just a technical moment here, MK. It's too dark when you dim all the lights on the band. Bring us up a little bit. I need to read a little bit before I continue. Okay, thank you. All right, folks. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We're kicking off tonight's program with a hit recording for the Glenn Miller Orchestra, Serenade in Blue. One, two, ready, play.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on August 20th, 1940. The Battle of Britain. After France surrendered to the Germans in June of 1940, the first phase of the Battle of Britain began on July 10th, with Luftwaffe attacks on shipping in the English Channel. The following month, RAF Fighter Command airfields and aircraft factories came under attack, but were never seriously weakened. Today, in a speech directed at the young pilots from Britain, the Commonwealth, and Nazi-occupied Europe, Winston Churchill said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. Leading off tonight's program is 720 in the Books, a popular dance tune from 1939. We're pleased to have Kat Kellaway here to sing it for you. One, two, three.
call with an NBC News report on May 16, 1941, the Blitz. On August 24, 1940, the German Air Force accidentally bombed London, and the following night, Britain retaliated with an air attack on Berlin. This prompted the Germans to shift their main effort from attacking RAF airfields to bombing Britain's towns and cities. On September 7th, the first major German air attacks on London began. It was bombed for 57 consecutive nights, an act of terror the British press referred to as the Blitz. It was fought entirely in the air. On November 14th, the Germans began bombing other cities and towns. Today, some 6 months later, the Blitz ended, with British morale unbroken and Britain's capacity to wage war unimpaired. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We're going to open tonight's program with one of my favorite songs, It Had to Be You. One, two, three, four.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on December 5th, 1941. Russians launched counteroffensive against Germany's invading army. Barely a month after the fall of France, and while the Battle of Britain was being fought, the Germans started planning for the Blitzkrieg campaign against Russia, known as Operation Barbarossa, which began on June 22nd, 1941. For the first few months, they achieved spectacular victories, capturing huge swaths of land and hundreds of thousands of prisoners. But today, with winter setting in, the Red Army launched a major counteroffensive, which should remove the immediate threat to Moscow and bring the German High Command closer to the brink of a catastrophic military crisis. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We'll open tonight's program with Laura, a beautiful song about lost love. Here to sing it for you is Frank Sinatra, who will also debut his talents playing an alto saxophone. A first for Frank. So give him your support, folks. One, two, ready, play.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on December 11th, 1941. Japanese attack U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. On December 7th, 1941, a date that President Franklin D. Roosevelt said would live in infamy, Japanese carrier-borne aircraft attacked the U.S. Pacific Fleet stationed in Pearl Harbor in the Hawaiian Islands. 8 battleships were put out of action, and 7 other warships damaged or lost. Crucially, the American carriers were at sea and so escaped, and the base itself was not put out of action. The following day, the U.S. Congress declared war on Japan, which had also attacked British and Dutch colonial possessions in the Pacific. Today, the Germans declared war on the United States, and the conflict is now truly a world war. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly performance of Let's Dance. We're going to start this evening's program with In the Mood, another big hit for Glenn Miller and his orchestra. One, two, three.
This is Francis McCall with an NBC News report on June 8, 1942. U.S. Navy defeats Japanese attempt to capture Midway Atoll. In late May of 1942, the Japanese sought to eliminate the United States as a strategic Pacific power by luring the U.S. Navy carriers that had escaped Pearl Harbor into a trap at Midway Atoll. They had just succeeded in occupying the atoll and its island runways in preparation for further attacks on American carriers. The loss of the U.S. carriers would, the Japanese hoped, force the Americans to the negotiating table. In the end, it was the American carrier-based aircraft that inflicted a crushing defeat on the Japanese, largely due to U.S. code breakers determining the location and date of the Japanese attack. This enabled the U.S. Navy to organize a trap of their own, beginning on June 4th, 1942, and lasting only 4 days. The U.S. Navy was victorious. Today, with their victory at Midway, the Americans are now able to seize the strategic initiative from the Japanese, who suffered irreplaceable losses. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. I'm Benny Goodman, and we're going tonight do a program a song called Caravan, a classic jazz tune. We're pleased to have Tony Bennett here to sing it for you. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2. took years off. Then it took years off.
This is Francis McCall with an NBC News report on January 31st, 1943. German army surrenders in Stalingrad. The battle for Stalingrad began in late August 1942, and by September 12th, German troops had reached the city's suburbs. Bearing the name of Russia's leader, Stalingrad had a symbolic significance as well as a strategic one. Throughout September and October, the city's defenders contested every yard of ground of the devastated city. The Red Army's stubborn defense held, and counterattack was launched on November 19th, which soon trapped the German army. Today, January 31st, 1943, the German army surrendered, which ended Germany's dreams of an empire in the East. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We'll open tonight's program with Dizzy Gillespie's song, A Night in Tunisia. One, two, three, four.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on May 13th, 1943. Victory in North Africa. In September of 1940, the British campaign against the Germans and their Axis allies began. For the next 2 years, the fighting was marked by a succession of Allied and Axis advances and retreats. In the summer of 1942, the Axis forces looked poised to take Cairo and advance on the Suez Canal. However, the British Army halted their advances at El Alamein, 150 miles west of Cairo, on October 25th, 1942, which turned the tide of war in favor of the Allies. By the beginning of November, the Axis forces were in full retreat, and today, on May 13, 1941, Britain and its allies have declared victory in North Africa. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We're going to start this evening's program with Sentimental Journey. Tonight, we welcome Doris Day to sing it for you. One, two, ready, play.
Report on September 3rd, 1944. D-Day invasion on the coast of Normandy, France. Operation Overlord, the invasion and liberation of Northwest Europe, began on D-Day, June 6, 1944. That day, under the overall command of U.S. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, British, Canadian, and American troops, supported by the Allied navies and air forces, came ashore on the coast of Normandy. By the end of the day, 158,000 men, including airborne troops, had landed. Initially, except for Omaha Beach, German resistance was unexpectedly light. But it soon stiffened, and the Allied breakout from the beachhead area was painfully slow. Eventually, the breakout was successful, and on August 25th, Paris was liberated, followed today, September 3rd, by Brussels. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. Take the A-Train was composed in 1939 by Billy Strayhorn. Duke Ellington heard it and offered him a job. To close the deal, Strayhorn got him directions to Ellington's house that began, Take the A-Train. That became Ellington's hit song. One, two, 3.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on January 25th, 1945, the Battle of the Bulge. On December 16th, 1944, in a last-ditch effort to win the war, the Germans launched an attack on Allied forces stationed in the Ardennes forests of Belgium, France, and Luxembourg. In the ensuing battle, known as the Battle of the Bulge, They initially pushed the Allies westward, but improved weather conditions on December 24th permitted Allied air attacks on German forces and supply lines. The Germans finally ended their offensive today, on January 25th, 1945. This devastating loss could be a major turning point in the war. This concludes our report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We'll open tonight's program with I'll Never Smile Again, a ballad made popular by the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. Tonight we are pleased to have Sarah Vaughan here to sing a band. One, two, ready, play.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on February 11th, 1945. Big Three meet in Yalta. A week-long meeting between Winston Churchill, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Joseph Stalin which began on February 4th at Yalta on the Crimean Peninsula of the Black Sea, ended today. At that meeting, the post-war division of Germany was agreed upon, as was the decision to bring war criminals to trial. But the future of Eastern Europe remains a stumbling block, with the Red Army still in occupation. This concludes my report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We're going to kick off tonight's program with a 19th century march made popular by the Glenn Miller Orchestra, American Patrol. One, two, three.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on March 16, 1945. Japanese army defeated at Iwo Jima. The battle to eliminate the Japanese presence on the island of Iwo Jima in the Eastern Pacific has been won by the United States Marine Corps and Navy. They landed on the island on February 19th. Today, March 16th, after almost 4 weeks of combat, the American invasion, designated Operation Detachment, succeeded in capturing the entire island, including 3 Japanese-controlled airfields. These airfields will provide a staging area for attacks on other Japanese-held islands. This concludes my report. Stay tuned for the Betty Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We'll begin this evening's program with Tangerine, a song portraying a fictitious South American woman who, when she dances by, senoritas stare and caballeros sigh. Here is Cass Davey from the hit movie The Fleet's Inn to sing it for you. One, two, three, four, one.
This is John McVane with an NBC News report on May 8, 1945. Axis powers surrender. Since their defeat at the Battle of the Bulge on January 25th, a number of smaller battles have been fought by the Axis forces, but each one resulted in their eventual surrender. On May 2nd in Italy and Berlin, on May 4th in Northwest Germany, Denmark, Holland, and Bavaria, and on May 5th in Central Europe. And today, on May 8th, the Allies formally accepted Germany's unconditional surrender of its armed forces. Thus, the 6-year conflict in Europe is finally over, and this day is being called Victory in Europe Day, VE Day. However, battles with Japan are still ongoing in the Western Pacific. This concludes my report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. We're going to start this evening's program with Sing, Sing, Sing with a Swing, an instrumental made famous by no others, the Benny Goodman Orchestra. We'll play it for you now. Enjoy. One, two, three, four.
This is Francis McCall with an NBC News report on September 2nd, 1945. Japanese surrender. On August 14th, 1945, a week after nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. This date is referred to as Victory over Japan Day, VJ Day, although they formally surrendered today, September 2nd, aboard the USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay. Coming several months after the surrender of Nazi Germany, Japan's capitulation in the Pacific officially ends the 6 years of hostilities and brings the Second World War to an end. This concludes my report. Stay tuned for the Benny Goodman Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benny Goodman, and welcome to another weekly broadcast of Let's Dance. It's going to be the last broadcast for this particular year, so enjoy this one tonight. We've got a real treat in store for you. The Andrews Sisters are in our audience, and they're going to come up to sing their big hit, Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. So accompany me. One, two, three, Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back to real time. I hope you enjoyed that visit. by our attempt to recreate typical evenings of radio listening at homes across the United States and abroad. This performance is the result of several months of rehearsals by the band, and I'd like to introduce them to you now. I'm going to sit down so you can see them. Wave when your name's called, guys. Andy Petkovsky. Gary Spanik on guitar. Hugh Spain on, no, not Hugh Spain, God bless him. I hope his emergency is resolving itself. We've got Harris Teeter. Harris Teeter on piano. Harris Simon. Thank you, Harris. We also have Dion Walsh on drums. Our trumpet section, Rich Stout. Steve Avery. Jim Ewer. And Rich Schmidt. Our trombone section, Bridget Charlton. Chris White. Kevin Marshburn. And Philip Humphreys. And our woodwind section, Jim Osborne, Mike Jacobs, Tom Crossan, and Bob Rice. And now our vocalists, Aiden Pace, Steve Sladizek, Sandra McDougall, and Sharon Pound. All right, folks, we hope we've given you an enchanted understanding of an enhanced understanding of the significant battles fought during the war. We based our news reports on historical documents available on the internet. Undoubtedly, radio broadcasts of big band music provided a valuable escape for the American people from the worrisome content of these reports. We'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to be with us and for being a wonderful and responsive audience. You were just fabulous. Thank you. We'd also like to thank the wonderful staff of Williamsburg Regional Library at the theater. Happens to be just one person up on the booth, and she's a cute little gal, runs all over the place. I just know her as MK. MK, thank you so much. And a special thanks to our NBC News correspondents, Jim Noren as John McVeigh, and Marcia Allen as Francis McCall, for guiding us through the significant battles of that war. Okay, folks, all of us on stage have various musical backgrounds, live throughout Hampton Roads, and come from different walks of life. Performing tonight because of our love of big band music and wanting to share that love with you. To enable us to continue offering these concerts, we could use your financial support. So as you exit the theater, if you'd like to make a strictly voluntary contribution, we have some of our band families standing at the top of each aisle holding baskets to receive it. Thank you. For our final selection this Veterans Day, we'd like to honor the men and women of our armed forces by playing a medley of their respective military anthems. While we're playing, if you or a family member have served or is serving in the armed forces, please stand and sing along with our Boogie Woogie gals and our newscasters when your branch's song is played. Good night, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and Happy Hanukkah. Thank you for coming tonight. One, two, 1, 2.